Hello, everybody. Welcome back into another episode of the Deployment Dudes, where we are just guys being dudes, talking all things deployment. I am your host, Scott Hutter, joined by my co-host, Phil Fannin. Phil, how we doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great.
Wonderful.
What are we talking about today here?
Well, we've got our guest that we've had on before, Clay Martin. And Clay, I think we're going to talk about our tech app.
First repeat.
First repeat.
Yeah, first repeat.
So welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You must have impressed us the first time.
I don't know, man. I tried to go back and listen to one of those episodes, and I can't do it. I had no idea that I go like all the time. Like you,
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have had you back again then.
yeah.
Sorry, just kidding.
Do you listen to yourself? Super cringe.
I like myself.
You like yourself?
I do.
Yeah, I like yourself too.
I'm more better each time I do it.
More better?
More
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing we've launched this year to try to, improve our customer service and the communication is our tech app, right? So we want to dive into that. Let's just start with the journey. Where did the idea stem from, and what was the main purpose of it when we launched it?
Yeah, I think the original vision for the tech app is it's obviously changed over time. Originally, it'd just be great to have the app in the hands of a technician that's on site, right? Then you can give them the right guidance. You can have kind of a checklist, a to-do list of what the tech needs to do when they're on site. So, I mean, that's the simplest reason why we started thinking about it. It can be a little messy communicating with technicians on site. I think this is one of the things that any field service operation kind of struggles with and has to deal with. We communicate with a lot of different modalities, whether it's WhatsApp, via text, traditional phone calls, virtual meetings, right? Teams meetings, like every way you can think of, we are communicating with text that way. So sort of standardizing that communication is another reason why I think we really thought the tech app would be important. But it turns out over time there were much more important reasons for the tech app than that. And I don't know if you want me to get into that.
Yeah, well, I think the way that techs have communicated from the field is a little bit antiquated and messy, right? You got multiple systems, so the communication and can get sloppy. You could be pulling from email. You could be, to your point, text, phone calls, Microsoft Teams. So this is really trying to consolidate and streamline all of those different processes and important documentations, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the documentation point, if you have a guide for what a technician needs to do when they're on site, it's valuable, like in its simplest form, to just have a tech app, right, that a technician can pull out, and they can see, what the scope of work is, what it is that they're supposed to do when they're on site. That's the simplest use case. And if that's a document, just making that document available in the tech app is a good reason to have a tech app. Also, just the purchase order, right? Like the terms and conditions, why I'm on site, what I'm obligated to do to receive payment. That's another good reason. But that turns out to be, again, the least of the reasons why it's critically important that we have one.
Yeah, and how many times have we heard stories of customers say, hey, your technician showed up, and they first thing out of their mouth is, I don't know what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
Or are they on site?
Or are they on site? Because
lot
we have
of
geofencing built into this, I think,
Yeah.
right? And then, the other thing too is your project coordinators maybe forgot to send them the documentation that they were supposed to have when they got there. So maybe they're doing a site survey or something of that nature. Examples of the kind of pictures that we want to be able to take, near, far away, those kinds of things. Here's all the individual points of data that we want to receive from while you're on site, and those things get lost, or they just never send them out. But in this tech app, the funny thing is that techs never forget their phone, right? They can forget to take their PO or their work order. They can forget to take the documentation that you sent them or you emailed them the night before, but gosh darn it, they never forget their phone.
That's right. And if you try to take their phone away from them, they'll be really uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys have heard of this happening. We have a client, I will not name the name, but is very security conscious, and they don't allow our technicians to have their phone on them when they're actually doing the work. And this is something that is very, very uncomfortable for them.
How do we get by those scenarios?
Well, it can be literally like having to have a printout of like what's required when you're on site.
So tech app is then rendered useless.
In that particular scenario, it would not be a great use case for us, yeah. But I'm only aware of one client where that's an issue.
I want to talk about one feature in particular. One part of that tech app that I really like is the milestones. Because to Phil's point, it's always the communication is key anytime you're doing a field service event. And clients want to know, when does that tech get on site and what is the progress all the way through completion? So can you talk about how the milestone is structured within the tech app to keep everybody in the know on what's happening on site?
Yeah, so a couple things that turned out to be really important. One is the techs, they don't love getting 24-hour call aheads, 1 hour call aheads. Hey, are you almost on site? And answering their phone call or having to respond to text or whatever. They don't love that.
They have a job to do.
They have a job to do, and to the degree that we can make that less disruptive for the technician, that's a huge win for us. So an example of this is, Scott, if you're a project coordinator and you're doing a 1 hour call ahead, right? And so you're literally calling me. I'm on my way to the site, maybe, or maybe I'm on a different site, right? Because it's an hour before I have to be there. Having to answer a call is a lot different than getting a push notification, right? And then on my phone, I can just acknowledge it, say, "Yep, I'm going to be there. I'm aware that I have to be there." It's a much different experience. You brought up geofencing, but same kind of thing, right? Like having to talk or communicate with a project coordinator in some way to confirm that I'm on site is a lot different than acknowledging that I just crossed a boundary, a geofence. Like, now I'm on site. Hey, it looks like you're here. Are you really here? Yeah, I'm here. Now, to be transparent, this is functionality that we're still working on, but we acknowledge that this is critically important, and we kind of got to get these things right. But if we do, we know we're going to be able to reduce a lot of the friction. Some of these tasks turn out to be really important. I had an inkling in the beginning that just uploading deliverables, right? So to kind of take a step back, our clients, they almost always require some sort of proof that our technician has actually done on site whatever it is that they're required to do. So this is almost always like pictures before and after the event, or sign-off forms, or like a combination of both of those things. So what that often looks like without the tech app is technician leaves the site. We don't have the deliverables, right? So somebody's trying to track them down. So again, might be a project coordinator, might be a PM. Then they're able to track them down. Then the tech's got to figure out, how do I get those deliverables to the PM or the PC? That might be email. And then, somebody like me that is responsible for the data is like talking to the PM or the PC. Hey, we have to have these deliverables uploaded in our system, right? And it's not only that, like we have to prove to our client that we have these deliverables. So if you think about all those steps in the chain, that's a lot of work, right? The beauty of the tech app, obviously, is like if I have to take a picture, I take the picture with my phone. If I've got the app open, I can literally open up the picture taking app, whatever that is on my phone, take the picture, and it automatically gets uploaded, and it's synced with Dispatch One. So all of those steps are now gone. If we're integrated with the client, that means just magically those deliverables are now like in the client's backend system. No communication, no steps, and like that's a super simple use case, but extremely high value.
Yeah, and you can add structure to it too, right? Like we've all seen where tech will get off site, and the deliverables, there's just a flurry of pictures attached. They're not labeled. Then you have to go through a QC audit. You can actually build out in the app what specific pictures they need to take, and they can do that right in the app, and then it names them, and you're checking a box for that specific deliverable.
That's right, and we do that today. So we have a ticket and a purchase order, and on that purchase order, you can say, these are the required deliverables that we have to have. They're named, and so in the technician app, they can see, I need these 4 pictures of these 4 things, and that's an absolute requirement that has to be done while I'm on site. And of course, in the tech app, you can just kind of walk through that, like to your point about a task list. And that's one thing. Again, it's not likely to have follow up required because it's simple and the technician can just kind of walk through it. Task completions, as it stands right now, are just kind of like literally like a checklist. But that's something that's changing. We've actually been working on this for a long time. So when you think about tasks, right? Like some tasks are sort of conditional. It's like if I do this thing and this thing happens, then I need to do this other thing. But if this other thing happened, then I need to go down this other path, right? It's like this conditional logic. And so that's one of the things that we're working on. Also, going back to the point about reducing friction and communication via integration, we can actually integrate our tasks with our client system. And this is something that I think is going to be immensely valuable for our clients. I was on a call today, again, not naming names, but we have a particular client who has done a lot of customization on their back end, and they've built their own tech app. And one of the things that I'm trying to work with them on is look, there's a lot of good reasons, and we'll get into this, why we want our technicians to use our app. But if it looks to you, like in your back-end system, as though the technician was using your app, even though they're using ours, like there's fundamentally no difference, why not use our app? And so like this particular client, they've built something similar. They have workflows of the techs out in the field, and they're kind of going through the process and checking those boxes. They get at that information in real time. But why can't we do the same thing when the technician is using our app? And that's even more valuable, of course, for the majority of our clients that don't have a tech app, right? Now we can communicate with them in real time via API what our tech is doing on site as they're doing it. Right.
So as they're going through and checking these boxes, if they're integrated, they're using Salesforce Lightning or ServiceNow in near real time. If that integration is in place, they'd be seeing those updates as they happen in their systems.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're working to. And that I actually just got out of a meeting talking to a client about just that. So,
and think about what that does from a beneficiary standpoint of if you're typically the way it used to work is you've got the tech there, you're hoping that they're capturing all the right photos, but you don't know until they actually end up sending those to you. Now they're technicians in the field, right? So they're likely leaving that job, going somewhere else, unless it was a full day for them. Now you're reliant on them to try to get you the information, the deliverables that you're looking for that night, maybe the next morning. If they forget, you're hounding them, whatever. At least in this case, back to my point, let's say you do get those later, you're auditing them, you realize that, oh, you didn't get the pictures we needed, or this critical piece of information is now missing. We didn't get the answer to this. Now what do you have to do? Reschedule them, go back out, have the customer have to accommodate somebody getting on site again, more expense, more delayed time. Whereas as these things are happening, if we can build that tech app with all the different things we want, this picture goes with this sequence here, this data needs to all be filled out, and we can watch that as it's occurring. And then if we're not getting what we need in that very moment, we can give them guidance, direction. We can even turn it on to where you're now having a chat with them and you can start walking them through the system. Yeah. They can turn their phone on and you can see what it is that they're seeing or whatever, and you can navigate the situation.
So now you're getting to like what I've come to, like the real value of the tech app and why it's absolutely critical.
That's what we do here on Deployment Dudes. We get to the real value.
That's and that's part of it. So you just described a scenario that actually we're dealing with an escalation right now in real time that's very similar.
Then what are you doing here?
To what you just described, because I actually can't make it better. But,
yes, you can.
But I'm aware of it. And the thing I need to do is build this tech app.
Oh, let's hear about it. I mean, real escalations happen. So give us a breakdown. What is it? What's happening?
Well, so I'm trying to, I don't know what it's appropriate to say and not, but I definitely don't want to name clients, right?
Yeah,
but
no.
But so like in this situation, a tech went out on site and was communicated the wrong thing. Now, whether we communicated the wrong thing or the client communicated the wrong thing, that's up for debate. But the tech had the wrong information. That's the bottom line. Because of that, like there was an event, like, and we're obligated, right, to try to ensure that our clients are able to address these things as quickly as possible. That's why they come to us. But we were not able to resolve the situation when the technician was on site because the technician didn't have the right information when they arrived. And so they left, right? And we have a site where this issue hasn't been addressed as of now. And that's a real problem. And kind of the retrospective that I was listening to, I was sitting in on the call with the client, and the client was saying that there's no reason, if we had the proper communication channels in place, that the tech, even in the event that they arrive at the site with the wrong information, right? Like that should have been able to be corrected while they were on site. And it's always in our best interest to do that, right? You never want to have a tech leave and have to come back at a different time if you can avoid that. Even if it means they have to stay a little bit longer, it's always in our best interest to do that. And so, the tech app, for all the reasons that we've already talked about, is it creates a scenario where it's less likely that that's going to happen. This kind of thing is still going to happen, but it's far less likely, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important for our listeners to realize that, even though we're sort of airing dirty laundry, it's important to know that we're transparent about it.
Yep.
These things do happen. And, we're constantly, we've got the brain power, the initiative, the inspiration to address these kinds of problems because we know they exist. They're out there. They do happen, even when you're trying to mitigate them as much as you possibly can. And we're driving real solutions to problems. To you're never going to solve these things 100%. But if you can reduce that by a significant margin and take a lot of that error out of the equation.
Yeah, and I really think we can do that in a measurable and objective way. I know we've had a whole podcast where we talk about AI, but as it turns out, AI is the biggest reason why the tech app is critically important to our future. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of walk you through why I think that's the case. We talked about last time how the best predictor of a quality outcome for a given dispatch or like a break fix event is finding the right technician in the first place. I believe that to be true. I could be wrong, but I believe that to be
You're
true.
right. You're right.
One of the ways that we're doing that today, as we talked about last time, is we use AI. So we use AI, and we're constantly refining this technology to give our project coordinators a short list of the technicians in our technician pool that if they use them, they're pre-vetted. We've used AI to pre-vet them. And if they use any of these technicians, we're likely to have a good outcome. So we use AI to power that, right? And that's really important. We've already talked about why that's all important. But kind of the next step in the process, once a project coordinator has been fed, the short list of technicians, is we have to communicate with the vendor associated with that technician. Sometimes the vendor is the technician. Like sometimes we're dealing with an individual person, but we have to communicate with the vendor to let them know, hey, there's an opportunity for you, and you've sort of been pre-vetted. Like you meet all the requirements, whether it's compliance stuff, it's competency alignment, whatever it is, budget stuff. You're a good fit. And so the mechanism for that communication that we're using today, and this is where we're getting the most value from the tech app today, is of that list of 10 technicians that AI generates, one or all of those can be used to send the corresponding vendor an opportunity, and they receive that opportunity via the tech app. So if you're like a vendor and you have X number of technicians, there's an administrator within that vendor company that receives those opportunities via the app. And one of the things that's new, we just rolled out this week, is so the vendor sees that they have all these opportunities, right? And now they need to understand, okay, well, this opportunity was targeted for a specific technician, but in reality, maybe there's more than one technician that can do this event. And so we have a mechanism within the vendor app to share the scope of work and other information associated with the ticket to the technician without the technician seeing any of the financial information, which is really important. We can talk about why that's the case. And then so the technician can communicate with their vendor or their administrator, yeah, I think this is a good fit for me, or I'd like to do this work or not. The vendor can respond to that opportunity. So they can say, yeah, I want to do this work. I'm good with the budget. Let's do it and accept it. Or they can say, yeah, I want to do this work, but I don't love the budget, and submit a counteroffer. And all that communication happens internal to our system. So scaling these dispatches is dependent on the vendor app for that reason. So everything I just described is just a step and a series of steps that's required to sort of get to full automation. One of the things we hope to roll out next month is, like, not only do we generate this short list of technicians for our project coordination team so they can send opportunities to the corresponding vendors, but there's no reason a project coordinator has to do that. It should just happen automatically, right? So AI determines the technicians that are the best fit. We know the corresponding vendors, and those opportunities are just automatically sent to the vendor. When I first started at Kinettix, like it seemed to me that the biggest bottleneck in the whole process was this vetting, right? It's how long does it take a project coordinator to find a technician? And there were all kinds of reasons why that took a lot of time, why it was inconsistent, why they might not choose the best technician or vendor. But this enables us to completely automate all of that from top to bottom. So at this point, the vendors receive these opportunities and they can negotiate via the platform. But we can automate that negotiation too, right? This is a perfect use case for AI. Like, AI understands all the information associated with the ticket. It has all that context. And so AI can negotiate with the vendor for us. So even the negotiation, if the vendor doesn't just choose, or one of the vendors doesn't just choose to accept the opportunity, now we can initiate a process that's completely automated, that's negotiating with the technicians or the vendors on our behalf until we have an assignment. That's not only completely possible, I think we're working towards that. The other reason why AI is critically important is the way we're set up at Kinettix is, Phil, as you know perfectly well, is we have these project coordinators that are sort of responsible for making sure the techs know what they need to know when they're on site. If a tech has a question, they're responsible for communicating them. We even have this role called technical coordinator. So for like the more technical scenarios where we have a technician on site, we have somebody that's kind of a domain expert that can work with technicians on something that may or may not be particularly technical. So the question has always been, like, how do you scale that? Like, to me, again, it's AI. So now if you have all this communication that's happening via the app, through push notifications and internal app communication, all that communication is getting logged. This is something that AI can learn from. And we already have all the contextual information about the contracts and the tickets and the specific requirements and all of that. And so I think we will have more consistency, and we will be able to offer more help to technicians responding to their questions, and even prompting techs to make sure that they're on track and that they're doing the right thing, and using AI to facilitate that communication. And maybe at some point it's entirely AI driven. So in this, we talked about the Turing test last time. So like the Turing test is like if the technician on their end is not aware that they're communicating with like an AI bot, like they can't distinguish between a bot and communicating with a real person on the other end, that passes the Turing test. And I think we'll be able to do that in a way that does just that.
How far away do you think we are from that?
Maybe a year. But I think getting to the point where we're automating the opportunities, where we can automate the negotiations for those opportunities, I think that's the timeline on that is much shorter. automating the opportunities, I think, like I said, I think that's probably going to happen next month. And very soon, probably next month, our vendors will be able to say, yep, I want to do this work. And right now they can do that. They can accept it, but then somebody has to approve it on our end. I think within a month or two, they'll be able to just accept it. And that vendor is now assigned to that purchase order associated with the ticket without a human in the loop. All of this has happened with nobody having to take any action.
So we've talked a lot about the positives around the tech app, why we built it, where we feel a lot of these benefits come from for not only us technicians in the field and our clients, but what are some of the downsides that we're seeing, if any, as it relates to the tech app? What are some of the challenges that we didn't know going in that we maybe later unveiled and said, oh, you know what? Didn't think about that as being a challenge or a problem or an issue or whatever. I mean, adoption with the technicians in the field has got to be one of those, I would think.
Yep.
Right.
A lot to say about that. Yeah.
When you've got an overly saturated world of apps, you know, and then so here's Kinettix adding yet another one into that mix. Does that pose challenges of getting adoption out there, or?
It definitely poses challenges with vendor app adoption. With vendors adopting the app, they want the opportunities, they want the work. There's no issues there.
Sure.
In fact, we already have hundreds of vendors using our app just because they want the opportunities, they want the work. But you're right, it's a much bigger challenge for technicians, and the reason for that, I think, is what you just described. It's like technician app proliferation, right? Like Work Market has their app, Field Nation has their app. Our clients sometimes have their own app, although that's the exception, not the rule.
And so we're talking channel clients, right? That's not necessarily the
clients.
end client.
Yep.
Somebody else may be an MSP or something like that.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, okay.
Or like an OEM scenario, but yeah, 100%. So I think there's ways to address that. One is, look, if you make the tech's app legitimately, or the tech's life legitimately easier because they're using the app, they're going to use the app. They just have to have that experience. And once they've had that experience and they realize it's easier to use the app than not to use it, they're going to continue to use it. And again, if they're bothered by all this communication and phone calls and emails, that might be one reason they do it. If they don't want to have to confirm that they're on site, that might be another. If they don't want to have to go through the trouble of getting the deliverables back to the project coordinator or the PM, that might be another. But I think there's other really critical reasons why, in the end, we will get the tech adoption. One is payment, right? That's one of the things we kind of always knew would be a big deal. Like, one of the reasons I think that the technicians love Work Market is because of this idea of fast funds, right? Like, they can decide to let Work Market take a small little percentage of their pay, but then they can basically get paid in real time, like almost like within a day or within, like, when they're leaving the site. And my understanding is, like, most of the technicians opt into that.
I'm not surprised why.
I'm not surprised why either. And like, there's no reason we can't do that. So we can sort of like float the payment to the tech, even if we haven't received payment from our client, and we can do the same thing, right? So that will be a compelling reason. Right now, our direct techs, to be honest, we don't always pay them super quickly, and this is a way to solve that problem. A more kind of out there idea that I have is, what if we could do a reverse
auction?
Well, we're doing the reverse auction, but what if we could do like a reverse integration? So, like what if you could use the Kinettix tech app, right, and still get the opportunities from Work Market and Field Nation that are sort of unrelated to Kinettix, but you could still manage that work in the Kinettix application. So now you have one application. Maybe it's the tech app is using it to manage their Field Nation work, their Work Market work, and their Kinettix work all on a single app. And can we make the app experience better than the Field Nation and the Work Market app, right? I think that's possible. I've worked on a number of integrations with Work Market, for example, from the perspective of like the worker or the technician, because we had an interesting client where that's the scenario we were in. We turns out Kinettix was the worker. And so to integrate, we had to have an integration with WorkMarket from the technician or the vendor perspective. And we have an integration now from the other perspective, right? Is sort of like the client perspective. I think it's possible to have a single app where a technician can go like manage their schedule across all their different work from their vendor, from the other avenues in which they're receiving work, which we know in large part that's WorkMarket, right? In a single application. And then there's a huge advantage to us, right? If their schedules are exposed, all of a sudden like route optimization becomes a lot easier. Like if we legitimately know when technicians are busy because they're doing other work, then we're not going to bother sending opportunities, right, for an event that's overlapping, as an example. So I think for route optimization, to really sort of fine tuning the opportunities we send to our technicians, it makes sense for us to do that. But then we can reduce the friction for technicians of having this like proliferation of technician apps, like multiple apps that they have to use. Now, that one's a little bit further out there. But I do think the bottom line is if we make the technician's life easier to use our app when they're working with us, they will do it.
You know what's funny about what you just described there? There was a day when I would have listened to what you just said, and I would have said, well, there's another example of Big Brother watching, right? How much adoption are you going to get when everybody feels like you've got control of where they are, where their time's being spent, those kinds of things, having all that data on them? But then again, I mean, like I said, there was a time I would have said that.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. It doesn't, it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's in today's world, like where most of us spend our time on the internet. Like we are the product, right? We are monetized. Like that's, to your point, that's how we get the targeted advertising. Like, and for most people, they'd rather receive ads about stuff they're interested in than not.
Yeah.
But we're the product, right? Like we're not going to monetize the technician's information. We just want to create a scenario for them where their life is going to be made easier because potentially they could just use one app, right? And even to manage work that's not, we won't benefit from, other than the fact that we know that they're busy. And again, if I'm a technician, I would appreciate the fact that I'm not being given opportunities, when I'm already doing work.
I think that's going to come in particularly handy when you start talking about, I think a lot of our audience may be just looking at a narrow viewpoint of national and making this a much bigger scale situation for us being global.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot to be said there when it comes to payment. And another reason why I think that the tech app will eventually be useful. But we could talk a lot about like crypto, and maybe that's another podcast. But we want to be able to pay the technicians as quickly as possible.
Sure.
And there's lots of mechanisms to do that would be facilitated and will be facilitated by the tech app.
Well, Clay, once again, very enlightening discussion. Always great to have you here as a guest. You can certainly count on being a guest on our show again. In fact, I would like to say, like, if we were going to leave our audience with a little nugget of the next show with Clay, what would you say? What would you leave them with as something that we're in the process of developing that will be germane or interesting to our listeners?
I think the big thing that's changed between this particular podcast and last time we recorded is we talked a lot about AI before, and we were putting time and energy and effort into that. Since then, we now have a dedicated team just to those AI efforts, and so just kind of talking about like the roadmap, what we're working on, and why we're working on those things, and the impact eventually to Kinettix and to our customers. I think could be a whole podcast and a really interesting one.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we look forward to that for sure. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, audience, we'll see you next time. Thank you.